Welcome to the deep dive. You shared a really interesting study with us. It's titled, How Do Students Regulate Their Use of Multiple Choice Practice Tests?
Yeah, that's the one, by Badali, Rawson, and Dunlosky. It's an educational psychology review.
Right. So, for you listening, the big question we're really digging into today is how do you personally tend to use multiple choice practice tests? And maybe more importantly, is that actually the best way for you to learn?
Exactly. Because, I mean, let's face it, multiple choice questions are just everywhere in education.
Oh, definitely. Quizzes, exams, you name it. Most of us have spent a lot of time with them.
So understanding how we naturally handle them and whether that's effective seems pretty valuable.
Okay, let's unpack the study then. What did they actually do?
Well, they had undergraduate students trying to learn German-English word pairs. Simple vocabulary task.
And they could practice different ways?
Right. They had choices. They could just restudy the list, or they could take multiple choice practice tests on the words. Or another option was using cued recall practice tests. So like, see the German word, recall the English one.
And I thought it was pretty smart. They also had these other groups where the researchers actually controlled the practice.
Yes, that's really key to the whole thing.
Tell us a bit about why that setup is so useful here.
Okay, so you have the self-regulated groups where students are in charge. That tells you about natural behavior, what people do when left alone.
Makes sense.
But then to know if that natural way is actually good, you need a comparison.
Right.
That's where the experimenter-controlled groups come in.
So the researchers made those students practice more.
Essentially, yes. They practiced until they got each item correct a certain number of times, a higher number than people usually chose for themselves.
Gotcha. So it gives you a benchmark.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It lets you compare the sort of do-it-yourself approach with a more structured, maybe more rigorous practice method.
And what about that cued recall option? Is that central to this?
It's good context, definitely. It shows if the patterns hold across different types of practice. But yeah, our main focus today is really going to be on the multiple choice part.
Okay, great. So the million-dollar question. When students were controlling their own multiple choice practice, what did they typically do? How did they regulate it?
Well, what's really fascinating is how consistent it was. The study found that students in that self-regulated multiple choice group, they generally practiced each word pair. Well, until they got the multiple choice question right about once.
Just once. That's it.
Pretty much, yeah. And interestingly, the same thing happened in the self-regulated cued recall group. They also stopped after getting each item right roughly one time.
Huh. So it wasn't specific to multiple choice then. It's more like a general, okay, I got it once, I'm good kind of approach.
It seems that way, yeah. Like a default strategy, perhaps. Got it right, move on.
But hang on, doesn't that feel a bit risky? I mean, you could just guess right on a multiple choice question, couldn't you?
Absolutely. That's a really valid point. It does seem minimal stopping after one success.
Especially compared to those controlled groups you mentioned, the ones who practiced more.
Right. They were pushed to achieve, several correct answers per item.
Yeah.
Not just one.
Did they notice anything else about how the self-regulated groups behaved?
There was one sort of subtle finding related to where the study took place.
Oh, like in person versus online.
Exactly. For the students who participated in the lab, in person, the ones doing multiple choice actually did fewer restudy trials before their first practice test attempt compared to the ones doing cued recall.
Fewer restudy trials, okay.
But for the online participants, it was different. They did a similar amount of restudying beforehand, whether they were planning on multiple choice or cued recall practice.
Interesting. So maybe the environment nudges those initial choices a little.
It's possible. It's a small detail, but it hints that maybe being physically present changes the initial approach slightly.
Okay, let's get to the results then. This is the part I think everyone listening will want to know. These students stopping after one correct answer. How did they actually do on the final test?
Well, as you might predict, the students who regulated themselves and stopped after about one correct answer, they generally scored lower on the final tests.
Lower than who?
Lower than the students in those experimenter-controlled groups, the ones who were made to practice more thoroughly.
Right, okay. So more practice led to better scores overall. That kind of makes intuitive sense, doesn't it?
It does. More exposure, more retrieval attempts usually leads to stronger memory, better recall. That fits with a lot of learning science.
But I feel like there's a but coming. Didn't you mention something about the time they spent?
Ah, yes. And this is really the crux of it, I think, the key insight for you listening.
Okay.
While those self-regulating students, the ones stopping early, scored lower, They also spent significantly less time practicing. Much less time overall.
Ah, okay. So less time, lower scores. More time, higher scores.
Exactly. But here's the twist. The researchers then looked at the scores in relation to the time spent studying, like learning efficiency.
Okay, yeah. Bang for your buck, study-wise.
Precisely. And when they did that analysis, they found that the students' own strategy using multiple choice and stopping after about one correct answer was, and this is their term, comparatively effective.
Comparatively effective. Okay, let's unpack that phrase for you, our listener. What does that mean practically?
It means that, yes, they didn't reach the absolute highest score possible, but for the amount of time they put in, they actually learned quite efficiently.
So it's a trade-off then. Maximum possible score versus efficient use of study time.
That's exactly it. And this forces you to think about your own learning goals, right?
How so?
Well, is your number one goal, above all else, to get the highest possible score on that final test? And do you have unlimited time?
Usually no, on the unlimited time part.
Right. So if yes, then maybe pushing yourself to practice more, like those controlled groups, is the way. But
Yeah.
if you're juggling, say, multiple classes, or you have tight deadlines,
It was pretty common for students.
very common, then maybe this one-and-done approach with multiple choice practice is actually a pretty smart time-saving strategy. It gets you decent learning for the time invested.
So it's not necessarily wrong to stop after one correct answer. It just depends on your context and your goals.
That seems to be what the study suggests, yes. It's about balancing performance with efficiency, finding that sweet spot for your situation.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not always about perfection. Sometimes it's about getting a good grasp efficiently.
Exactly. Sometimes breadth across topics is more important initially than depth in one.
Now, going back to that cued recall group quickly, did comparing the multiple choice results to them add anything significant?
Mainly, I think it reinforced the idea that this stop after one successes strategy might be a general tendency.
Because both self-regulated groups did it?
Yeah. Whether they had multiple choice or cued recall, they landed on roughly the same amount of practice,
Yeah.
about one correct retrieval per item.
So it hints that maybe this is just how learners instinctively approach practice when they're in charge.
It certainly points in that direction.
Yeah.
A kind of default, good enough threshold, maybe.
Interesting. Okay, let's touch on some of the study specifics. They used, what, 24 German-English words?
That's right, 24 pairs. And they were careful about difficulty, too.
How so?
They actually used data from a previous study to figure out how hard each word pair was likely to be.
Okay.
And then they made sure to spread the easy and hard ones evenly across the different blocks or sets of words that students learned.
So one group didn't just get lucky with all the easy words.
Exactly. It helps make the comparison fairer, ensures the results aren't just down to one group having an easier list.
Good research practice. Now, there was also something about students maybe using notes or other help, external aids.
Yes, that's a really practical point they look into. They asked students afterwards if they'd used any external memory aids while they were studying.
And did they?
Some did, yeah. They reported things like, jotting down extra notes or even looking things up online while they were learning the pairs.
Which happens in real life studying, obviously.
Absolutely. But the crucial part is they also asked if they used aids during the final test.
Ah, okay. Because that would skew the scores.
Right. So they reran the main analyses, but this time they excluded the people who admitted using aids during the test itself.
And what happened? Did the results change?
Nope. The main findings held up. The conclusions about self-regulated practice and its efficiency, they were basically the same.
That's good to know. It makes the findings feel more robust, even considering real-world study habits.
It does. And it was interesting what counted as an external aid for some.
Like what?
Well, apparently some students who used mnemonics, memory tricks, they classified those as external aids.
Really? But that's an internal mental strategy, isn't it?
Usually, yes. But maybe some wrote them down. The researchers noted it highlights how fuzzy the line can be between internal strategies and external props sometimes. It's about the student's perception, too.
Huh. Fascinating little detail. And it sounds like for anyone really keen, the researchers are open to sharing their data.
They state the data are available upon request. Yeah. Which is always a good sign of transparency in research.
Okay, so let's try and boil this down. For you, listening right now, what are the main takeaways from this deep dive?
I think the biggest one, maybe the most practical, is that your natural tendency, if you use multiple choice practice, to kind of stop once you get something right. It might not be the worst strategy, especially if you're pressed for time,
So don't beat yourself up about it necessarily?
Maybe not. It seems to be a pretty efficient way to learn, even if it doesn't lead to the absolute highest possible test score. It delivers decent results for the time you invest.
Right. So it really pushes you, the listener, to consider your own priorities. Is it always about maximizing that score no matter the time cost?
Or is efficient learning, fitting it into your life, also a major factor?
Yeah. And it prompts you to reflect on your habits, doesn't it? When you use multiple choice questions for practice, do you do this one and done thing?
Or do you drill them over and over until you're absolutely certain? This study suggests that maybe that first instinct to move on isn't necessarily lazy. It might actually be, well, efficient.
Comparatively effective.
Comparably effective, exactly.
Hmm.
Even if it might mean leaving a few potential points on the table in the final test.
Definitely gives me food for thought about using practice tests going forward.
Me too.
Yeah.
And maybe a final provocative thought for you to consider is this.
Okay.
Given that this seems to be a natural way students regulate their multiple choice practice, aiming for that first success, what does that imply? What are the potential upsides and maybe the downsides of educational systems that lean really heavily on multiple choice tests?
Versus systems that use other kinds of assessment or practice.
Right. How might knowing this influence how you choose to use practice tests from now on? And maybe what other questions does this raise for you about what effective learning really looks like?